there was a brown.
I
There's a
remember
brown.
the brown wizard.
That's in Lord of the Rings.
The brown wizard?
Gas something gas dark. He's the one that's of the nature.
Yeah, that's what she said.
She doesn't work from home.
That's Lord of the Rings.
She's been at
Oh, he's
Madagascar.
the one. I
5 in
know
the
who
morning,
he
comes home
is.
at
He's the one that
6:30
lives
at
out
night.
in the
In the middle of
It's
nowhere.
middle of
ridiculous.
nowhere, and he's kind of frumpy.
Yeah, the bunny.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Well, Wally is definitely.
morning.
All right, we have 111 online, so we're getting there.
I might be drinking crack. Whatever, Jeremy. Speaking of which. Hi, Missy Dolores, how you do? I'll put it up here so they can all see it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. You know, this is actually kind of nice. We can get serious.
Hey, we do have a good group.
Yeah,
though,
this is,
even though-
this is,
good.
these are like old family friends here locally.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you guys didn't make it to the office because, you know, it's great down here. Okay, so, welcome to NDPC, Teams and in person. Thank you for attending. This particular event, we are going to keep the chat open. And that's because we believe there will be lots of questions and lots of what going on. So I ask that you please be kind. You know, I mean, you can talk about me, I don't care. But don't talk about anybody else. They just be kind. Don't say it, okay? If you have questions in person, just raise your hand, let us know, we'll talk about it. If you have questions online, Christy is sitting in front of her computer and she will ask them as quick as possible. Always, I thank the board members here. Christy Bybee, current president. Vice president is Trish Gibson, who bounced out. Oh, there she is. Secretary Catherine Nelson, treasurer Sean Ellis, God bless him. Directors Suhair Sage, Nicole Marley, Varushka Corso, Dalton Hooks, Trudy Johnson, Kevin Campshire, Dr. Kevin DePachard. Look, I said it right.
Debbie Parshad.
Oh, dang, I've been
It
practicing
was
too.
close. It was
I've been
close. It's
practicing.
better than the last.
I know, I've been practicing. Miguel Delgado and Glenda Lee. Don't forget to go to our website for all the future events. Most importantly, the gala coming. The gala's coming on November 3rd.
Just so you know, for those online and in person, we have 10 tables left.
That's it?
That's it.
That's because
So
everybody want to be
If you guys
there.
want a table, you want to sit, if you have somebody, you have to get those registration forms in. Send them into the ndpcinfo@gmail.com because those tables are going to go pretty fast. We have 10 left.
That's amazing.
So cool.
It's a great party. It really is. It's a great party. It's a great time to get dressed up, to come in, to see your friends, and just to sit and relax, eat good food, and talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a good time. Our final Breakfast and Learn for the year is going to be November 15th. So please, if you are sitting around and like to do a sponsor and be a part, please do. Membership, PayPal is working for for event sponsorships and memberships. This will be the last year for free CEUs. CEUs cost, and so we're going to use that as a part of our membership. So in order to continue to get the 3 hours of CEUs, you'll need to either be an individual member or a corporate member. You can check that out online. It's not crazy.
We're building it right now, so it should be up in about a month.
Oh, she's saying it'll be up in about a month. So check it out. Sponsors, we sure appreciate it. We're going to have Trish come up and talk for a moment about her IMA. I need you guys to understand that if you want to be a sponsor, a mere $500 sponsor will get you the 5 to 10 minutes to talk about your business. So keep that in mind. We've got one left on November 15th.
That's taken by Dignity, but we can
Oh.
still, yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, but we can do another one if they want.
All right, come on up, Trish. Let's talk about it for a minute.
And
Yeah.
what's the topic for the November 15th?
I believe it's return to work practices, something along those lines. I don't know the. Give me a second and I'll tell you. Are we ready? Yep, you can start, Trish.
Good morning. I am talking to you today. I sponsored, it's a great opportunity, like Christy was saying, for the Consulting, and the IMA group purchased us 2 years ago in May. Almost 3 now. In May it'll be 3, so 2.5 years ago. And they also purchased MKCM. So now Orchard Medical and MKCM are still doing business under the IMA group. So you will see the names interchangeable, but a lot of people don't understand, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity. We have nurses here in Las Vegas. We have nurses in Reno. We have them in the 7 western states. And with the addition of MKCM, we have them in every little town you can imagine. So when you guys get those weird claims when people move out of state, we've got nurses that, are familiar with, the doctors in that area, and they can help you get that claim on track. So I just wanted to let you know, and at any time, if you guys want to set up trainings, the nurses can come too, and you can sit with them and chat with them and learn what they can help you with, especially the new adjusters. I find that the newer adjusters really value the input from the nurses. And back in the day, as we have Mike Barkley here today, we used to have the nurses sit in the team, and it was just key. So you don't have that anymore, but they're just a phone call away. You can call and ask questions. They'll help you, and I will help you get those claims assigned to those nurses here or pretty much anywhere in the United States. So that's it for me today.
Woohoo!
Thanks.
We appreciate that greatly. So remember, it's an open forum, so ask questions, ask. We expect to see a lot of them. Our panelists, this is amazing to me. We always talk about the 1.0s. This is a table of 1.0s.
Yeah.
Is that good?
I don't know.
It so is. Because, in 1901 when I started, I met these guys. So that means they were here before 1901. So I'm just saying. I'm going to start with Michael Barkley, who's currently at Cornell. Yay! So excited. Because any 1.0, please call me if you need a job. Because, that's who I'm looking for. Okay, I'm not going to say anything more because then they'll be mad. I met you at CIS in 1994.
In the old days.
In
1901.
Yeah, 1901. So you worked for CIS for a number of years. You were a trainer at CIS, and that's why we locked you into this, is because one time in 1902 when I took this class, you were the teacher, and you were there. And then you've been doing it and having a great time, and now you've been with a couple of TPAs and are with mine, Corvette.
Yes.
Yes, he's a good place. And then, I'm going to skip Dalton just for a minute. I'm going to go to Christina. So, Christina, though, I'm having a hard time speaking to her because she retired, whatever that word means. She said something about 6 Saturdays and a Sunday. I was like, whatever. I was chatting with her, and she's got an amazing history. Again, I think I met her in 1905.
Yeah.
So she started in California actually doing workers' comp, and then came to Las Vegas. And when she came to Las Vegas, she was also a paramedic. And there is some amazing history of Christina's, which I love. And then when she came to Las Vegas, she worked, and then somebody said, hey, there's an opening over at CIS. And she was like, oh, really? And she didn't even know. And then she started there. And in California, when you started, you said it was 86, 80?
87, 88.
87, 88.
Yeah.
And then you retired last year?
Yes.
Whatever.
December.
We got that part. See, you cannot hate that, cannot hate that. And again, in my life growing up in this industry, part of what I used to do when I met Christina, go to her for answers. Because she's a plethora of information. She understands it. She's a critical thinker. She's logical. And she also says, oh, wait, that's a little bit different. Because in workers' comp, there's always something different. So we thank you so much for stepping out of your pajamas and coming to work.
That's all right. It was a rough time.
I know. I know. And then, of course, there's Dalton, which we all know because Dalton is now king of the universe. And so
Top with
we
him.
all know him. But he also came from those days. He talks about OSHA. He talks about all of that life. And that's truly the 1.0 that he was when he all started it, too. And when we started talking about this particular class, because I do believe that we all need this, Dalton is the one who said, hey, I know the two people need to do it. So we always appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because what you don't know is that Mike and I worked together at BCS. That's what we did. I did wage calculations with Mike right before he became a trainer, and I went to OSHA.
Wow, that's so cool.
We sat next to each other.
Oh, so this should be easy, old
We
time.
did, actually.
Old time. We're flashing back to 1906.
Yeah, yes.
We also have him here because wages have changed. They have changed. And so there's gonna have two opinions, we're gonna talk about it, and then Dalton, who will tell us how it applies today in this crazy world we're living in.
Also, everybody online, I did email out the wage calculation forms, the wage verification forms, as well as the PowerPoint. So if you need those, please check your emails. You should have them.
Okay, and with that,
Yes, ma'am.
So wages have changed, but the statutes, I don't ever remember there ever being a single change in the statutes since I've been here.
There was last session, but only to address concurrent wages. What's
Okay.
changed is the case law, and I'm guessing Mike has got those in here, he's gonna talk about
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, actually,
Well,
that's
yes,
what
Kevin,
you're here
That's
for,
what you're here
Yeah,
for,
right?
is
to
concurrent.
talk about the case law. Yeah.
Would've been nice if you guys had told me that.
Should have responded to
You kind of
okay,
drafted.
so with that, let's start
So-
the Wally the Wizard.
Yeah, well, Wally, we decided before the event here that Wally must have been the one that either didn't graduate from Hogwarts or really low on the totem pole. Because when your main job as a wizard is to do workers' comp wage calculation, you haven't exactly hit the top of your field because this is not Dumbledore or what's that dude's name? Gandalf. This is like way down the totem pole. So Wally specializes in wages, and so he's got some tips as we move along. I used to start all my classes with really bad jokes, but I get teased now when I do one. So I'm not going to do one.
Okay.
Dolores has one. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Well, I was going to get Christina to bring the jokes, but she said no. So today we're not going to have time. I think the class that we used to do on wages was like 3 weeks long. Yeah, it was long because there was a lot to it. There's a lot of different processes that go into it. It takes quite a while to get through them all. So we just don't have time to go through all of it.
I only brought 3 cracks.
Well, and they said, yeah, talk about wages in 3 hours. Oh, yeah, I can't tell you what time it is in 3 hours. So pretty much decided that. I think what the point that was brought up earlier about the law hasn't changed much, but the interpretations have changed a lot. And it's funny how when you look at one statute that appears to be pretty clear, and then people can read it differently and interpret it differently. And so at one time, we pretty much had a uniform way of doing it. And pretty much everybody did it the same way. And then, over time, it kind of, people would do it a little bit differently, and then people would change. And so you would see a lot of differences in the calculations. And then we would argue about who was right and who was wrong. And of course, I was right, but Dalton was wrong. And no, we used to. And then if we have time after we get done, we can take some questions about those wacky, wonderful wages that have, that are the out there wages that we have to do that don't fit into any of the patterns we're going to talk about, because that's pretty cool. So we decided to start out, and unfortunately, I think this is going to be really small for those of you in here, so we'll cheat. But the people online, since it is the bulk of you, can take a look at our wage challenge, and you can take a look at it and see if you can calculate this wage. Now, we were going to offer prizes for those of you that got it right, but then we realized that it would be hard to get them to you. And the couple people that are here are like, well, I got no calculator and I can't do this. So for those of you here, just take a look and see if you see anything on there that would trigger you. I'm not sure you can see it real well.
Cause you pause.
Can you zoom?
But, what's that? But I tried to make them as big as I could, and they were much bigger on my computer screen than they are here. But we're going to pause for a minute to let you guys at home try to figure this wage out, or at least identify the key things that are going into this one. So those of you here,
We can't zoom in, huh?
it won't let us zoom.
I don't think so.
Would it help if you just call out what's there so that they can see
So what's on that
the
D8 on the top?
Well, that was part of it. We were going to kind of
Oh, okay.
tell that, but I think that would be a better thing to do. So this wage has a couple things that make it fun. One is it has, yeah, this is really small for even me.
No, that's what I was up against when I was printing it out.
Oh, then you printed it.
Yeah,
So this one is the one that has, I believe there's a bonus on this one,
yeah, there's a bonus.
and I believe there's some
and
meals
there's
on
the
this one.
meals.
And so one of the things we're going to do when we discuss the forms is we're going to talk about some of the things people miss quite often. And wages, you end up missing meals quite often. You miss bonuses. There's a lot of things that, yeah, help me if you can make it. That thing will do it?
Maybe?
Well, that'll make it full screen, but I thought it doesn't show up if you
You
do
said that this will make it not show up.
Is that better? Yeah.
that. Can they see?
Well, it's better for you, but not for online, because it's still the same.
Okay,
So we're gonna have to go back once you
Okay.
get done talking. They can see it online,
okay.
but.
Yeah, I apologize for the size of these things, because we, like I said, they were nice and big, and I thought they would even be bigger here, but they're actually not. But what you'll see here is, we're gonna go through the form quickly and talk about the different things here. The idea partly for this wage was that you would catch the meals, and you would catch the bonus, and you would know how to put those
And where
into
to
the
put
wage.
them. Where to put them.
And where to put them. So, those of you at home can keep calculating. I think we're just gonna move on. You wanna wait?
Give them a couple of minutes,
All right.
just a minute.
Christina says I have to give you a few minutes to calculate it.
And
Quite
the reason
often.
we're doing
Oh, go
this is to let you guys know why a class in average monthly wage calculation is paramount. It's really, really needed. There's certain things we don't do on a regular basis as adjusters. So yeah, the meals, the commissions, the bonuses, tips.
We have an answer from someone.
Okay, hold on to it for just a minute, and we will see if they're right.
So are meals still a thing for casinos? Is that a?
Yes.
Yes, you see it quite a bit.
You see it in Northern Nevada too, when they do room and board and stuff.
A lot of times you'll have clients and you'll know that the meals are coming because you know which clients pay meals and that. But what I find is that a lot of the wages that I see, people have, we go fast and adjusters are busy, and so they try to do this as quick as possible, and you miss stuff.
Sure.
And then
Jump
when you,
right down to there's the 12
Yep.
weeks, I'm gonna calculate.
And that's what we
They
do.
don't read the top.
Exactly.
and I know bonuses are another thing, and we're gonna talk about how to prorate this one, because one of the other things you'll see a lot is the bonuses will be listed, but you don't know what period of time the bonus covers. So we'll talk about that shortly too.
In this one, you do.
In this one we do, because I think I
You put
I
it,
filled it out.
Yeah.
And quite often you see these D8s with some blanks on them. So if I
To go advance, we should
just hit the button, okay. So there is my wage tape. It's a little out of order.
Okay, wait, let me just make sure. It did not show up, so we're gonna have to,
Back out of there.
yeah. And then
that should be.
move this,
Can you see now?
give me one second. Yes, it's good.
Okay.
I got a text message too that asked for me to remind you that when you come to meals and in this, and you're looking at the D8, like for particularly hotels and stuff, receipts are not required, that's different. Receipts are required with travel, sometimes what you can use per diem, but with wages, it's not, you don't have to prove that you're buying lunch.
Correct. So the overall average monthly wage is $3,564.36. Any correct answers out there?
Wait, what'd you say? 3,000?
$3,564.36.
Yep, Jessica Cramp got it correct.
Nice job. Woo-hoo. And we'll make sure you get your prize, whatever that is.
Good job, Jessica.
In the old wage class, we actually used to bring calculators and everybody would run their wage tapes. And now I don't know if we have too many wage tapes anymore because,
Yeah, because wage tapes, you guys tape them onto the paper. and
yeah,
fill
we
out
actually
what you
did that
said.
in the
We all
1.0
said we got
days.
Ryan.
But if you want to take a look at this, basically, this is the old school way we used to do the days. We'll talk about those shortly because everything in here we're going to talk about. And then you're going to see your gross added up. We divided by the 84 days. came up with our gross average monthly wage, but then we had to add in a bonus. In this case, this bonus was for 6 months. So we just took our $600, divided it by 6. I picked that so that I could easily do the math in my head, because I'm not very good at math. Not exactly a good thing for someone doing a wage.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Maybe keep
But
that to
it's,
yourself.
oh yeah, oh, I'm really good at
Well,
math.
it's out there now.
Yeah, it's out there. And so then the meals, which is, actually, we can cheat and use the D5 form to do that, because it tells us how to calculate those. And then just this last, the part on the left here, where I added the gross monthly wages, the bonus, the meals, and came up with the total. And good job to anybody out there who got it right. You don't have to listen to the rest of the class. No, please do. Okay, so we got 2 more examples.
Can you go back to the bonus part?
Oh, you bet. Boom. So it's,
Wanted to explain it?
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. So the $600, on the D8, it said $600 and it gave the period of time. And in this case, it was a 6-month period of time. I think it was from 1/1 to
6:30,
6/30.
yeah.
And when you get bonus wages, you'll usually see them in one of 2 places. They'll either put it up there in the top of the D8 where this one was, and then hopefully they'll tell you what period of time that covers. So you'll see bonuses for a year, you'll see bonuses for 6 months, quarterly bonuses, different types. And then in this case, it said it was for a 6-month period of time. So we just took the 600 and divided by 6, came up with a 100 a month, which is kind of the logical, that one's kind of easy. Other times they'll put they'll put the bonus calculations, or they'll put the bonus amounts actually in the wages. And if you get lucky and the bonus is for the period you're using, you can just add it in. But you got to be careful, because what I've seen a lot is they'll give you a bonus in the period that you asked for. You know, say they'll put 12/31, $1,000, but that bonus is for the whole year.
So
Or,
that's how when we submit our wages, it comes from our payroll department, and if that check was cut during that 12-week, you'll see an extra check in there. But that's a longevity check, and it took a full year to be able to get that.
and you see a lot of mistakes in bonuses because of that, because you don't, and sometimes you need to add it together for the period that you're looking at. So in this case, I made it simple just because I was trying to make it easy for you the first time. Plus, I thought maybe I could do that math. So our next one,
So one of the chats says, as a newer attorney to the field of workers' comp, his name is Jordan Roberts, where would you find the formula to calculate bonuses and meals?
so the meals is on the D5, which we will show.
Okay.
It's actually got the formula there. The bonuses, I don't believe it's on the D5, so usually you have to just figure out what the period is and then, you know, appropriately figure out how to prorate it, which is why it's tricky, because you can't just throw it into the wages.
So that means if you have somebody that has a bonus and you don't have any length of time, you have got to reach out to that employer and find out for what period it was supposed to be, because it has to be divided by that number of months.
Can't ignore it.
And quite frankly, a lot of times that's the issue, is we're busy and we like, oh, I'll just add the bonus in. But that's not always the appropriate thing to do. And in time, clients get used to it, and they get used to the fact that you need to know what the period of time is, and they will include it. You just kind of have to educate them as you go along. And then sometimes you do that, and they'll still not give it to you properly, so you have to call every time. Not that I'm being, you know, not that anybody would do that, but sometimes. So this one is a little tricky. Well, it's not really.
Can I throw something in there?
Yeah.
So, we can also cash out our vacation. So if we earn too much vacation and don't use it, we can cash out our vacation twice a year.
You hiring?
I know. I want to.
I literally cashed out my vacation this week.
I know.
And put me back in her.
So now what do you do with, it's not a bonus, it's vacation cash out. What would you do with that?
Anybody want to answer?
Yeah, you would add it as income. So you just put it in with the rest of the wages.
But you would want to find out.
Earned in that period, right?
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
want to find out, like, and it is tricky with that one because if that vacation was a year's worth,
So it's not earned in that period, you have to have taken 70 hours within a year in order to be able to cash out. And you can only do it twice a year, so. And I see that in those wages too, when I get the wage, I'm like, what is this? Oh, they cashed out or they did it. And so I don't even know what that period is because it's a rolling calendar.
yeah, it really is. And well, what I would have probably done with it, and then I would have had to argue about it, I suppose, is I probably would have taken it and found out, like if you do it twice a year, I probably would have divided it by 6 months and prorated it that way. But if I was, say, the injured workers attorney, I would say, no, you need to add that full thing in because it was paid right here. And I'm not sure what the answer would be.
Any opinion, Dalton?
This is where I stare at the attorney.
Gosh. Yeah, so look, this is, I don't want to step on Mike's toes in
Step
terms
on
of
me.
the presentation. But I'm guessing he's going to get to the actual text of the law. What the wage has to do, your ultimate wage, you've got criteria. You start with 84, you do 12 months, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the last one says it has to fairly reflect the wages. So there are a number of arguments that we could have around your scenario, Sandy. Is it wages? They're cashing out a benefit. They did it during a certain period of time. I probably lean towards what Mike suggested in terms of how he would approximate that. But the question at the end of the day is this part of the employees, the claimants' remuneration package
Yes.
that constitutes their wages? So I would have some questions for the employer, you in that case,
It's bargained.
right? How does this work? And, if you can do it twice a year, how does that play into the calculus? I think that there are going to be areas in this particular section where there's room for interpretation, debate, and fighting about what really the statute means. It's one of the few ones that isn't as black and white. Because you are trying to figure, we've got stuff that's built into it. If you're a piece worker, I'm sure we'll get to that. We're going to be approximating, and a lot of times we're just approximating. What we're trying to do is to get as close as we can to what this person really earns during the period in question. And because of variability over the course of somebody's year or over the course of their career, there's going to be a lot of variability there. So I agree with what Mike said. It's probably not going to happen again today, but we'll put that one down.
So online, someone said likely you would have to interpret it in the way that best benefits the claimant.
Well, the standard isn't to best benefit the claimant. It is to get as close as we can to what their actual earnings are. So in some cases, that isn't going to benefit the claimant as much as a more liberal interpretation of the circumstances would be.
Also, wouldn't we just add it from the date they received it? If it lands in the one-year dates,
And
it's true income.
that is a really good point because we're going to talk about a year calculation and why that is something that Wally will recommend to you. And it's for exactly that point because if you use a year, things are a little bit easier to prorate in most cases because you don't have to prorate them because usually you don't usually get a bonus that's 3 years worth of stuff.
That's what, I have a question from Monica Wagner. She said, the wage form said the bonus was included, the wage before, not this one. She said, the prior one, are we just hypothetically speaking, or did you just say it had to be paid in that period, and then you have to prorate it because you have to spread it out over the year?
So that's a good question as well. If I can just put that one on hold until we
Okay.
get to the bonus section, because I think that's a really good question. And it kind of depends on how they do it on the D8 and where the money is put. And then you can usually tell, so.
And I want people to understand that the wages, it takes a minute. Don't blow through them. Get them checked, get them double checked. And it doesn't mean it's a liberal interpretation.
Yeah, you can be in circumstances, I don't know if Mike has created examples for you, where the actual calculations are just gonna dramatically skew what that person would be earning. And we don't wanna go high, we don't wanna go low, we wanna target, this is what their earnings are, or effectively as close as we can get.
Nicole Sartain pulled out a NAC 616C423, says payment for vacation, and does not state it should be prorated, does not talk about bonuses, and goes on to cite they should be prorated over the period, therefore it is income and should be included.
Yep, I think,
I'm just reading what she said.
yeah,
That is the statute.
that is it. Okay, so we're gonna come back to that because it's in the presentation. This one is a bit of a tricky one. What we were hoping to get you on that one. Well, I won't say get you. That last period of time. This used to be my biggest, I don't know what you want to call it, pet peeve. Was when you would get, because the one thing about the form is it is exactly 12 blanks. So if you have a weekly pay period, then they put 12 weeks on there. And quite often, that last one goes past the date of injury. So you guys in here probably couldn't see that anyway because it's a little too small. So just pretend you knew that, you saw that. But those of you online might have been able to see the amounts and determine that that last pay period has to get thrown out because it goes past the date of injury, which leaves you with 77 days. 77?
Yeah.
And you can tell by the date of hire that they've been there long enough. So this is one that you wouldn't calculate for an average monthly wage. You need to get that other week of pay period, of payroll. I used to hate it because you got everything you need except 1 week, and so now you got to get a hold of, the employer to get the 1 week that you're missing. But I see a ton of these where they just calculate it with this 12 days. And it goes past the date of injury. And this one is a good example because if you see that last pay period is reduced because they didn't work after the date of injury. So they got less.
The other thing is, we say don't calculate. If you've been trying to get the wages from the employer, your claim has been accepted, you're on your 13th day, and you know that TTD has to be paid on the 14th day, calculate with the 77 days, put it in the average monthly wage that this is a tentative wage, and that upon receipt of the final or the first pay period that we're missing, we will recalculate and issue an underpayment or any underpayment that was missed.
Being
because of it.
late on TTD is not excused.
Nope.
For any reason. If you don't have the wages, you don't have whatever, you were sick, whatever, being late on TTD is a benefit penalty, 17 grand plus.
Each time. Yeah, and so what Christina brought up when I did this, because I had in there, stop, don't calculate it, you can't calculate it, and she says, well, you can. And what she was pointing out is that it makes for a better tentative wage, makes for a better estimate if you're actually using the material that you got, as opposed to sometimes where we just project out an estimate or come up with something because we got to pay TTD. So that was that calculation. And then the third one, I'll let the people at home work it through a little bit, but this one just has one little quirk in it. I'm not sure if you guys can see in here to figure out what the quirk is. Just one little quirk, and again, this is one that I've seen a lot of errors on. I think I've probably made this error many times.
Did we go over the numbers for the last one?
There wasn't
There
any.
wasn't any.
There wasn't.
Yeah, we could have done the tentative.
Right.
Yeah. I think the thing is, what I see a lot with when I taught this and with newer adjusters, sometimes they will spend forever trying to calculate a wage when they don't have enough information. And so they spend all this time calculating a wage, and sometimes they can't figure out why it's not coming out or why it's not right, or they'll just put it in wrong, and then they got to go back and redo it. And so my thing was always, if you don't have the information you need, then don't even waste your time calculating it. Get what you need, and then calculate it. In the old days, Dalton and I, when we worked at BCS, we used to get these things in paper, And the first thing you would do is look to see what information you had. And if you didn't have enough, we stuck it in a different pile. You know, went into the, I got a call on this pile, or folder, or the trash, if that was where it went. No, that's not where it went. So one thing I also want to point out, and we threw this at Dalton last minute as far as, I didn't show him the PowerPoint, the slides. There should be, did we do handouts for this one? Do they have the NAC? Do we know?
I don't know if they have the NAC. I did give them the wage calculation form, the wage verification form, the sheet on DIR about explanation of wages.
Okay.
And then your PowerPoint.
Okay, so in a minute here, we're going to talk about which NACs you want to refer to. And I have a handout that basically I just blew up the NACs and took out some of the citations that we don't use very often. Sorry, legal people. And then I'll be happy to send that to anybody who wants it.
I'm sure everybody will. So
Yeah,
if you
I'll-
just want to send it to me and I'll put a blast to all the
Yeah,
participants.
I'll do that. So I don't want to spend too much time with everybody sitting. This one had a change in rate of pay. And if anybody out there in computer land caught that, good for you. Because, and we're going to go over how this is done, but when you have a change of rate of pay, the NAC says you're supposed to use the wages from that day forward. So it changes your wage calculation. So although this person had been there a while, they had a change of rate of pay on the 23rd of July in this case. And so this calculation is using only the wages from the 23rd of July on, which was only 42 days prior to the date of injury, or at least 42 days in the calculation. So we were trying to, I don't want to say we were trying to catch you, but we were trying to make sure that, I see a lot of change of rate of pay come in and people just ignore it. They just use the wages and they ignore the change of rate of pay. I'm sure I've done it.
And if you're working for a municipality, every July 1st, we get a COLA. So if you have a claim on or after July, guess what? They had a pay raise. Plus on their anniversary date, they get another pay raise. So any municipality employer is gonna have 2 pay raises in 1 year.
Wonderful. This, by the way, we did as an example. So I want to back up for a minute. The wage, when you only use the raise, the period from the raise forward, worked out to just over $3,000 a month. It was $3,025.88 a month. And then Christina worked it for if you did not recognize the rate of pay. So let's say you just didn't see that there was a rate of pay change and you just used the gross. You can see that the wage was $25.58.41. Sometimes it's not that pronounced, but for this example, that would be a big deal. $500 a month.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. So this is just an example of the one that we did. I guess calculated incorrectly would be the right words to use. Isn't wage calculation fun? I look out there and I look at the group that's here, and they're like, oh my gosh, what did I sign up for? 3 hours of wage calculation.
I had a question come up.
It's critical.
Wait, sorry, I just went away from my phone. I just had this come up recently, so just to clarify, if you have a change of rate of pay from hourly to salary less than 4 weeks prior to the injury, how would this scenario be calculated?
I'm gonna ask to table that one for a minute because we're gonna get to it.
Okay, there we're coming, Amber, it's coming.
Yeah, good question. All of the questions that I'm gonna cover later, I just love those questions because it means more work. Yeah. Okay, so real quick, I'm not gonna spend an hour going through this. On the D8 forms, Wally has some recommendations for you. Not thou shalt not pass, not, go to, what is it, Mordor?
Thou shalt not complete for your employer.
Thou shalt not complete.
Wait, I do have a question from the last topic we were
Okay.
just talking about. So just to clarify, rate of pay change from the new date forward.
Yes.
Does not include wages before.
Right.
No.
Correct, okay. Did you get
Absolutely.
that, Kevin?
Totally correct.
Is that captured?
Yeah, because as you can see, it has a dramatic effect on it. So this is, what I found is, if you're lucky enough, like I am, to have some clients that understand the importance of the D8s, and they complete them fully, and you don't have to worry about it, it's great, because they give you everything that you need. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's a few of you out there who have some clients that don't fill the D8 out at all, or don't want to fill them out. They are a pain. I get it. These forms are, but they are required, and we need one for every wage. We need one even if you've got the information in other forms. For instance, you got check stubs or you got a payroll report. You still need the D8 filled out in order for you to comply with that part of the law. So I have here, help employers understand the importance of a D8. That's like a mouthful, right? Because you call the employer, I'm not filling that out. I had a client do that. Not you.
Thank you.
Not you. Who says, I'm not filling that out, you fill that out. Well, we tried to do some education there. Don't leave blanks. And any information could change the average monthly wage, such as the change in rate of pay. One little teeny place on the D8, and boom, you got a completely different wage. And then don't give up on the D8s. Don't give up on the D8s. Oh, sorry, I had to. Should just sing this class. Then we'd be sing this presentation.
I
Then
don't know,
everyone
there's
would
a lot of
listen.
young,
And you'd
there's
be
a lot
up
of
there all
young
by
adjusters, I don't even know if they got
Yeah,
that
they didn't even know that
reference.
song. I'd have to rap it.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to rap it. That's not going to happen. So again, even if you are able to calculate the wages using payroll printouts and other things, you still need to get a D8. It's required.
So the DIRs become very sticky about these D8s. We used to, back in the day, somebody would just send you a printout and write "see attached." And I do have to put, if I'm just giving you 12 weeks, I am putting it in there. But when the attorneys are asking for 1 year, or when my adjuster's asking for 1 year, I have to write "see attached." And so, when I get, and I don't, but as an adjuster, when I used to get a week into the pay period, are you guys now having to go back and say, redo the D8? Because we used to just say, send me 1 week prior to, and we would write it ourselves. So how sticky is the
I will
DIR?
defer to Dalton. What I would normally do is say, as long as you filled out the top part once. What I have told a lot of people is, if it's practical for you, fill out the top part and then make a copy, make like 3 copies, and then just do the payroll in the boxes. Or I would think see attached would be okay if the top part was done, where you've got the changes of rate of pay, any of that information in there. But
So as deferring to Dalton, I'll
I'm
defer
deferring.
to Sue here, who's now in my office, on what the DIR thinks about that.
Yeah, as long as the top portion is completed, and you wanna put C attached for that 1 year, that should not be an issue. Also, if you get the information from the employer for that 1 week that's missing and you're putting it in there, as long as you're documenting where the information.
Hold on 1 second, we cannot hear, they can't hear you online. Can you
conference,
Newer, kinder?
yes, we're very much more considerate and warm and fuzzy. Because that's what we learned at the DIR conference, was that we needed to be more compassionate. So that's where we are.
Oh.
They are and we are.
Cool, glad we got.
I like it. Compassion is great.
No, and being facetious, no way,
I'm
Sandy.
glad.
I always find Anne is very compassionate and kind at all times.
Soft-spoken.
Oh,
Soft-spoken,
I think
almost
she's
like a
known
wallflower,
for
you know,
that.
Yes,
you don't usually know what she thinks at all. You really have to pick at it.
Yeah. It's like draw her out of her shell.
I just have, yeah, I love it. So again, I'm going to break down the sections of the D8. I'm not going to read all this to you. There's a demographic part of it, which of course you need. And then we get into the part that would be important for your wages. You need the, were they, oh my goodness, I need Wally to come along. Were they hired to work 40 hours? If not, how many hours were they hired to work? What was the wage on the date of injury? And then comes the key part, date the wage became effective. And that one little blank that's sitting there towards the top of the form is the one that's going to tell you about change your rate of pay, that most people go right past. So there is that section. Then we've got the place where they add vacation, sick, holiday, overtime, termination pay. It's all in there. I could read each of the lines to you, but I didn't think that was could be good. Yeah. And then this is the section that describes the date the wage became effective part. So it tells you what was the prior wage, so you can see what the increase was. Did they change to a job with a different duties, hours of employment, rate of pay? Again, change of rate of pay could be for any number of reasons.
There is a person on here that, Denise Parr, said don't confuse change of pay with change in job. The average monthly wage of an employee who is permanently or temporarily changes to a job with different duties, rate of pay, or hours of employment must be calculated using only information concerning payroll which relates to his or her primary job at the time of the accident. The preceding sections apply in calculating the average monthly wage for such an employee.
Another 1.0.
And then it talks about, the
Yeah,
statutes and
you
stuff.
tell Denise Parr, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get off the chat. Denise Parr, one of my favorite people in the world.
In the world, and she's absolutely correct.
She's absolutely correct.
If somebody works for a company and then they get a different job and they get hurt in that different job, you don't get to go backwards and say, hey, but you worked for the company for a year. They've
Yeah.
only worked for that job that long, and that's the wages you get.
I can share just a piece of advice. If Denise Parr says it, she's correct.
Yeah.
That was pretty much what I was going to say. If Denise Parr says it, it's right.
Your word is gold, Denise.
But quit chatting on there. Go back to whatever you were doing. No, I'm so thrilled that you're there.
Listening intently is what she's doing.
Oh, nice. So we got a section where they're going to put in the pay, the bonuses, the commissions, the tips, the meals, the lodging. And again, you're all like, yeah, we can read a form. Would that everybody could and put in what they need to put in. I think what I mainly would do here is just make sure that you've got your yes, no boxes checked. Make sure that if there's, you will see people put down, yeah, they got a bonus or got commissions. No, it's not in the gross earnings, and then nothing else. So you're just like, well, that's helpful. Kind of need to know how much that was. So there's those things. And then the payroll at the bottom. I don't know if any of you've had this, but sometimes you'll just get one line, and it'll be like an 84-day period. And they'll just, do you have that happen? Yes. It'll say, 723 to whatever, the 84 days, and then it's a total. I need them broken out. I need the payroll. However you pay it, that's how I need it. So if you pay biweekly, I need the biweeklies. If it's weekly, I need the weeklies. Please don't give me a total.
That's why there's 12 boxes.
Right? Well, I wish there were 14. If I was redesigning this form, I would add a line because, again, like the one we used before when the wages went over, if one of them isn't you can't use it, then now I'm short one. And, the employer's like, I filled it out, it's all right there. Well, it is.
It's also critical because when you're dealing with national accounts that don't do with the D8, they do not understand this type of class. And so you do get crazy conversation on that D8, and it's not okay. It's an estimated wage till you can prove all the facts.
Yeah, so, but the good thing about this one is it will tell you, it also gives you the now 6 reasons that you can deduct time out of a calculation, and we will discuss that.
Are we gonna go over excusable absences?
We are.
Okay.
We are. And then I put the last one up here because I'm just really one of those people that, like, if I start the form, I got to finish it. So we got to put the signature. But again, you want to make sure it's signed, because otherwise later, it's like, well, where did that come from? And I actually have had one case where I got a D8 that it turns out was filled out by the employee themselves and not exactly correctly. And there was no signature, and actually sent it back to get a signature, and they said, I didn't do this. Oh, that's not good. So to me, the most important part of a wage is how to figure out the period of calculation. I called it the POC because I made that up. But it's just the period of calculation. In other words,
Abbreviated word.
well, I was trying to come up with something better, like something that spelled something fun. But I couldn't, because it was like, I ran out of time. Sorry, I did.
Okay,
The pop.
Should have got Wally to help you with that.
Wally, look, Wally's worthless, all right? Wally's the wage wizard. What do you think he was doing? But it's really, really, really critical, really, 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 really critical that you come up with the correct period of calculation on a wage. And this is where most of the mistakes are made, because we like to use what we're given, not necessarily what we need. Ooh, I like that. Use what you need, not what you're given. So it's driven by the injured worker's length of employment in most cases. There are exceptions. So I've listed some of the methods that we use. So of course, if they've been there longer than 12 weeks, you're going to use the 12-week period. If the pay periods are semi-monthly, you're going to use somewhere between 89 and 92 days. I think there might be an 88 in there somewhere if you catch the right time, but
I don't know, I never found it.
I know 1 year, where you're going to end up with 364, 5 or 6 days, depending on where you catch it. Then you have situations where the person has been employed with the employer. They've been there somewhere between 29 and 83 days, and you may use that. Or if you're doing a year calculation, between 29 and 363 days. And we're going to look at all of these situations. And then if they've been there less than 28 days, we're going to have a projection. And unless they're piecework. This is where you get to add in all those but what ifs. So the most simple thing to do to start out is figure out how long have they been with the employer. It's the first thing you should do on every wage you ever calculate. How long have they been there? I can't remember if my slide next says that. It does. Go figure.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So before you even try to do the wage, just take a look at the date of hire, date of injury, and figure out which category they fall into. If they've been there over a year, it's easy. If it's like they were hired in 1988, then you don't have to go any further. You don't have to know exactly how long that is. It's longer than a year. Figure out how long they've been there, and that tells you which period of wages you need to calculate. And moving forward. Here's an example of length of employment that I did. So if their date of hire is 4/27 of 2023 and their date of injury is 8/16, they've been there 112 days, which will actually impact 2 different calculations differently. So people are saying, oh, 2 different ones? What? Because I'm going to be talking about the 84-day calculation, which would be the standard one you would use, which this person's been there more than 84 days, so we would do the 84-day calculation. But if you were trying to do a year calculation on this person, obviously they haven't been there a year, so you could do the full period of employment, 112 days. Tricky. It's no fun anymore now that you don't get to do the wage tapes, because it used to be so much fun to do that. Well, you know, it was fun because the adding in a regular calculator, and the first time you're using adding machine, you can never get that thing to work. But
What do we have, five of us in there
yeah,
doing 10 keys? Back
let me
in the
tell you
day?
though, it comes in handy when you're doing numbers on a computer that you used to do 10 key. It's like bill payers probably love that.
What is a 10 key?
Oh, 10 key.
No, I said some people were.
Oh yeah, some people are like 10 key. What's that?
Hey, what kind of tape are you even talking about?
Yeah, tape, paper. What?
Calculators have paper? Wait. Oh my.
For those of you younger, we actually used to have to use coins to call from the paper. And those days are long gone. So this is a Wally recommendation that I really want to sell to you, and I get a lot of negative feedback from adjusters who don't want to do this. I strongly recommend, Wally does anyway, that you that every time you ask for wage information, get a year. And just get a year up front, because number one, you don't want to have to ask the employer more than once to do the same information. So ask for a year. You want to get the correct average monthly wage as early in the claim as possible. There's nothing worse than going into a claim and then having it a year down the road. Now you got to go back and adjust all of the things you paid, and it's a real problem. If, as everyone's aware, if you're an injured workers representative, one of the first things they're going to ask you for is the 84-day calculation and the year calculation. So you're going to have to do it. But I also feel very strongly that if an injured worker is not represented, then it's the adjuster that's charged with making sure that they're getting the benefits that they deserve. So it's not really, to me, it's not really fair, if you will, to just do the year calculations on the ones with the attorneys. You need to be doing them for everybody. So it's a pain because it takes a lot longer to do a year, but it's really what Wally thinks you should be doing up front. And again, I don't think there's going to be anybody running around, checking to make sure you do this. And if I had a wage that was due that I had 84 days, I would certainly calculate it for 84 days. But I think if you're working from the beginning of a claim, you should get the year and do it both ways and give the injured worker the higher, because that's what the regulations say.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, this is a little off topic, but
That's okay.
you're doing your wage calculation, you're sending it to your claimant, he's not represented at this point, but in 6 months he is represented. Why would you have to go back and calculate it then? Because you've already given him 70 days to appeal it.
There's no statute of limitations on wages.
I'm going to leave that to my lawyer friend.
Sandy just answered your
Yep.
question.
Leave that to my other friend.
So the idea with wages is that at any time that the claimant discovers that there's been an error in the calculation, just to the same extent that you can, as an adjuster, find that you made an error, and while you're limited statutorily to only, if there's an overpayment or something, 30 days back, the claimant is entitled to do that at any time they find it's an error. The idea is there's a benefit that they were due to, it is, as help me out, as Ann said earlier, Jesus. She's so quiet, I forgot who even her name.
I'm with you.
As Ann said earlier, there is a right number, or more or less right number. Again, there are things for us to fight about, but if it's wrong, it's the kind of thing that should be corrected, and that's why there's no limitation to get that right.
Debbie, can you just repeat your question louder so that those online could hear?
Well,
Yeah, sorry. Somebody could hear your question.
I can repeat the question for her, because I got a mic here. What she asked was, Well, let's see if I can. Effectively, the question was, why can a claimant come back months later after you've already calculated a wage and have that adjusted? And the answer from Sandy was because there's no statute of limitations on getting the wage right, and then I think you heard the rest of my answer. So,
And I want to back up what Michael was saying too, because all of us have got dogs. All of us have been handed a dog. It's been open for 5 years. You're in it, you're going to finally stipulate it out, or you're going to send it to PPD. That, getting the wage at that time is crazy. But if you have the wage as an adjuster, when you get to PPD, if you didn't calculate that wage, you need to calculate it. Even if somebody else calculated it, you need to check it to make sure that the numbers you're using on your PPD are correct. And if there's a problem, that just means you got more problems. So calculate the PPD, always make sure you have the wages. When you take over a file, calculate the wages. Okay, that's my thought.
You know, and quite honestly, in the old days, in the 1.0 days, we would adhere to the, your appeal rights have expired, so your wage is kind of locked in. It just isn't, just isn't the way it is, and it doesn't put, you know, it's, there's not really much defense to it. I mean, sorry, you didn't get it right within 73 days, so it doesn't.
That's the one statute that has changed.
it has.
Yeah,
That is
that one
correct.
changed. And, you know, we used to, in fact, in BCS, we used to love it when they would come in late, because we'd be like, nope, it's late, don't have to do it.
Deny.
Less work, less work, but yeah, it's just, and actually, the funny thing is this is, one of the reasons that I put this in is because this has happened to me multiple times when the PPD comes up.
Right.
It's like, we've had this wage in place for 3 years, and now you're challenging the wage, and you're right. So now I gotta change the wage, go back over whatever TTD was paid, make an adjustment, and change the PPD amount, and it's just like, wow, that's a lot of work.
But it can go the other way too. If you calculate it and it's lower, you issue a wage determination new letter
That's correct.
along with the PPD offer with
Mhm.
the correct
Mhm.
wage.
Right.
Absolutely.
Not a good day, but yes, that is the way to do it.
You
I
don't
never-
get to-
Right,
You don't get to
right.
recalculate the TTD, you only get
Right,
that last 30-day
Right.
window.
right.
That's right.
If you need to pay TTD in that last 30
In that
days.
last
Yeah.
30 days.
I've never had one where it went down, though. I guess I just don't like. Mine always go up, and I have to go back.
I've seen a few.
No, I've
seen
had a
I've seen
few,
it a few times, not
yeah.
So, let me know if we need to take a break, because I don't assume that we
Probably
do.
in about 5 minutes, but if you think right now is a good time to stop and.
No, we can do the Bob Barker method first.
So there's one up here, it says up to the date of acceptance of PPD, if PPD is paid and claim closed, they cannot recalculate the wage at time of reopening or after.
Yep.
Denise Parr.
Denise again?
Right. That's correct.
She's correct. Like I
So
said,
what Denise is saying is upon reopening, it's already a done deal.
yeah. Good job, Denise.
Let's go ahead and take a break.
Okay.
10 minutes?
Yeah, for 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
All right, we'll be back at 10:20 for those online. Everybody go potty, get your coffee
No, you're fine,
refilled.
you're fine.
And we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
I do.
You guys.
You got this.
No, listen, I told you I had to
You don't need to
sit.
feel
I
bad.
ain't got you that, okay?
I love you to death.
TMI.
All right, we're taking a break right now. We'll be back in 10 minutes. 10:20, we'll be back.
Oh, well, where's the handout?
You guys, I'm gonna turn these mics off so you can talk in private.
We're not going to say secret things about Denise Parr. We're on.
He just wanted the entrance.
Yeah, Dalton wanted to be. And it's Dalton, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
So am I ready to start again?
Are the mics on?
Okay.
Yep.
You can start.
So we're going to talk about the period of calculation, or the POC, as Ann calls it. I used to, when we were doing this originally, we created something called the Bob Barker method, which is because at the time, he was the host of Price is Right, and I guess it's kind of appropriate since, he passed this year. And I was seeing something, though, where they were talking about the fact that he made it to 99. So even he didn't go over $1, as they say. No, I meant that in a nice way. I love Bob Barker. He brings me back to my childhood when I was sick, and I would, be at home from school, and you'd watch him on that show. But what we're looking for when we establish we find the pay period closest to date of injury without going over. So we're looking for the one that doesn't go past the date of injury, but gets as close to it as we can. So then you can use the magic wheel or a calendar, spreadsheet, whatever you got, to work backwards from your pay period end date. And then that tells you when your 84 days starts or when your year starts. So you can, I even put a magic wheel up there for those of you that still have those. Again, it's probably old school now, but
No.
I had to find this online. All of mine have some version of Dalton's Company on them.
And if you need one, we have one. We'll get one
Yeah.
to you. Let me know.
So I
You
have
need a day wheel.
one from his old firm and new firm. So I have two sets of calculations here to show you. One is, I think, incorrect. I think that's supposed to be 70 days, not 77. But one goes past the date of injury and one stops before it. So on this particular example, his date of injury is 9/10 of 2023. So you can see in the first example where the highlighted period is, that one can't be used because it goes past the date of injury. So if you work backwards 84 days from 9/2, in the second example, then you would come up with 6/11 as your start date. And I have the wage tapes there to show you how we would have calculated those in the old days. But I think it should have been 70 days, not 77, because these are biweekly pay periods. So I apologize for that error. And again, this is the mistake I see a lot, is people will use the period that goes past the date of injury, and that one's no-no. So if we were doing this wage calculation and this was the wages we were provided, the first one wouldn't be enough wages. We would need to get another pay period. The second one would be cool. We'd be able to do that one. Moving on. Maybe. So once you've got the pay period that you're using, your 84 days, your year, whatever it is that you selected as the appropriate pay period, you need to look for special circumstances. I couldn't think of a better way to call them, so I just called it special circumstances. You need to look for other stuff that you need to know to calculate the wage. And so this is in some examples. Change of rate of pay. We kind of talked about that, but you need to check and see, is there a change of rate of pay in your period of calculation? Because if there is, then you have to change your period of calculation, quite possibly. Are there days that you need to remove from the calculation due to a certified absence? The certified absences, the reasons that you can do them, they're actually listed on the D8, right above the payroll. They're also in NAC 616C438. And we'll go over them. I think I've got a slide later with them on it. The days where somebody has met a qualifying absence can be removed from the calculation so that it doesn't lower the wage inappropriately. You're gonna look for the bonuses and the commissions, you're gonna look for the meals, lodging, and tips, and any unidentified income. And I don't know how many of you have had it happen where there's all of a sudden income. Or there's a pay period where there's two pays, like two different pays. And you're like, where's that, what's that for? It could be something like Sandy brought up about the vacation cash out. It could be a bonus, it could be holiday pay. One of my clients pays their holiday pay prior to the injured worker taking off. So they give them, if they're going to take a week's vacation, they give them 40 hours worth of pay the week before they take the time off, which I always thought was interesting. I guess it's so they can have a good time on their week off. It's kind of nice. So any income that is on the D8 that you don't know what it is, you have to find out what it is, because it may or may not be something you can include. But again, I see a lot of calculations where people have just added it in. I don't know what that's for, but it's listed, so I'll add it. It's helpful if you can find out what it's for, so you can document it. Any one of these things could change your calculation slightly, so you want to identify them. And I'm going to go over some of them. As I think it was it Denise? Was this one of those Denise things where she said the rate of pay? So this is only wages from the date of the change in pay forward should be used in the calculation. She also mentioned change in job. If somebody's changed job, you're only going to use that. But that might change the period of calculation. So maybe you were going to use an 84-day period, but like in my example at the beginning, the change in rate of pay turned it into a 42-day period. So when you look at the change in rate of pay, Wally's tip is basically treat the date of the change in the rate of pay as a day to hire.
Easy for you to say.
Easier for you to say.
So let me jump in here real quick,
Please
Mike.
do.
So while you're stammering, let me
Yeah,
ask
well,
if I can help you out.
listen to the attorney.
Look, this issue that Denise raised is, I feel like we need to lay some foundation. The reason that we're looking at this wage is because that's what the claimant was making on the day they got hurt. That's the point of this. We're trying to, through the act, throughout the various provisions that are afforded to injured workers, make them whole based on what their earnings were at the time. So our average monthly wage is the foundation for your PPD, your TTD, all of the remuneration that you're going to get back under the act. And if somebody has received a raise, increase in their pay by the date of injury, well, that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at a period that would put them in a worse condition than they were at the time that they were injured. So some of this stuff is going to be natural if you understand the simple point of what we're doing. We're taking the day that you got hurt and we're trying to make you, within the limitations of the act, whole. And so if you understand that as you're looking at the wages, as you look at the catch-all that Mike will cover a little bit later, that says at the end of the day, your wage that you've calculated needs to reasonably reflect what the person was earning. Even if all of the numbers that we've come up with, 84, 100 days, a year, whatever the case is, if it doesn't accurately reflect what they were earning at the time they got hurt, you still have work to do. That's the point.
Thanks.
We do have Denise that wrote something online.
Oh, boy.
Denise, I thought Mike asked you to step away from the keyboard.
Yes.
So she did throw the statute 616438, calculation of days and period of earnings. Each day within the period of earnings must be counted to determine the period of employment except for days on which the injured employee was: 1, absent because of a certified illness or disability, including without limitation time for which temporary disability payments were made.
I think
2,
that's coming up in Mike's next slide.
oh, is it?
Yeah, it's coming up very soon.
We've got
So
it.
you want
But
me to
she's
wait?
absolutely right, as always.
And then we went through, yeah, there's about 6 of them, and
Yeah.
then no change in job, okay.
Yeah, she's exactly right.
Yeah, she did right, I'm just providing info to all.
She is, and that's helpful, Denise, thanks.
And she's a plumber.
Apparently, she's a copy and paste fiend today. know she's not typing all that. I know
From
she's just
memory.
over there with her
No,
mouse
she's
going,
doing it from
I'm gonna
memory."
put this in there, and I'm gonna put this in there, I'm gonna put this in there, but I'm glad. As Dalton said, it's on the next slide. And this is the 6 reasons that you can deduct. Now, the key here is, these are the only 6 reasons that are prescribed in the NAC to deduct. Unless it's FML.
And then you take the dates out, so you should.
And I'm going to show you an example of how that's done, but it's important that you says it's also on the in there, and the employer will see that and put their out. What I see mostly though is there's lots of reasons people don't earn any money for a particular time frame. And the correct way to calculate the wage is to find out why, because it may be that you can deduct it, it may be that it's appropriate to deduct it. But again, in the haste that when we people just add it up, put the 0 in, and on. And then you'll usually, if the is usually what you get. So you see that number 1 that's highlighted. They get that from the top of this screen where you see the 6 reasons. So there's the 6 reasons listed on the D8. They've told you that 7/9 to 7/22, this person was for reason number 1, certified illness or disability. So I have deducted that. So you see that the first thing that I did on the wage calc is I calculated the 84 days, but then I deducted the 14 days that they were out and came up with 70 adjusted days. That means when we do this wage, instead of dividing by 84, we'll divide by 70, even though we are using an 84-day period. And so that's kind of tricky for some people that aren't math people like me. I'm a really good math person, honestly. You you're still using an 84-day period, but you're taking 14 of the days out, so you're not dividing by 84, but you're still using the 84-day period. Same thing would be true on a year. If there was a period of time during the year where there were missing wages, you could deduct that if it's for one of these 6 reasons. And again, the trick would be, is you can see that period has 0 earnings up there.
So I had, I'm gonna call her out because she's a really great adjuster, Sandra Arnault. She was adjuster, and I forwarded the DA to her, and these used to be completed by our HR department until that happened. And they put in the date of absence, and Sandra did her thing, and she removed those dates. And when the DIR came to audit it, they were like, doing their thing, and they said, but you didn't tell the reason. She removed it, but we need to know the reason. And I'm looking at it, and I go find the reason, sick leave. Okay, but we pay our employees for sick leave. So if you're getting paid, these are unpaid days. So for those employers who pay sick leave, who pay, that employee was on FMLA, but they got paid, you're not gonna take those days out because it's not gonna affect their calculation.
Yeah, and you would see that because you would see the wages would be reported in there. This one's obvious because it's a 0. You have just made us feel very old up here because Dalton and I used to work with Sandra's mother.
Oh.
She was in BCS. Mary
And
was.
she took that at face value and she went and she did her
Yep.
thing, but then when the DIR was like, but what's the reason? I went back and went, oh, but, so we technically underpaid that employee and.
That's a good point to bring up. It's for unpaid.
When there's no money being paid to that employee.
Indeed.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So if an employee is paid every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
but in one of those weeks, they're not there. So there's an income there, but you can't tell.
The way that I would answer it is that if you look down the list of the wages and you see one that is way off, so for instance, say that they're making about $1,100 every 2 weeks and then all of a sudden you get when there's 5. That would trigger me to say, maybe they lost some time in there. Because you don't usually see them that fluctuate. Now, sometimes they do fluctuate in some positions.
This one kind of does too, 1,100, there's one for 899, is that?
Yeah, this one fluctuates.
Fluctuated enough to cause you to question it?
Um,
I mean, that's 300.
I probably wouldn't, but it would depend on what kind of employer this was.
If they're all 1045 and you've got one in there that's 899, then yeah, it's an outlier. You're just going to use your best judgment. You're looking at these when you've done enough of these, things will stick out to you. The 0 should be obvious to everybody. But if you got very consistent payments, which most of us have, if we get a paycheck, if you're on salary, it's going to be very consistent. If you got something that's off by a couple $100, you're going to assume that they're out of work. Something has happened, the pay has been docked or something's gone on, and you want to know what that is because that's the job, you're investigating.
If you're working retail, you're gonna get whatever hours they gave you, so
That's right.
you're gonna see fluctuation.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have like truck drivers, and so they work 3 weeks out, and then 1 week they're not working.
Right. And so that's an example of when you don't pull those days out because their representative wage is earned over 3.
Yeah, okay,
So,
thank you.
no problem. So hopefully this makes sense. So then I have the bonuses and commissions. You need to know how they're paid. Are they yearly? Are they monthly? Are they quarterly? Are they random? Because I have seen ones where they just give them a bonus every once in a while. And so you have to kind of know what they cover. You might have to prorate the bonus if it's paid for a particular period of time. And then Wally's tip for this one is to make sure that you document your prorated calculations so that they make sense. Because when you come back to this wage 2 years from now because somebody's questioning it, you're not going to remember where you came up with your totals. Maybe you will if you're smarter than me, but I wouldn't. So make sure you've documented why you did whatever math you did. So I divided it by 4 because it was a 3-month bonus or whatever.
So can I ask, does Wally have any other powers other than random work comp tips, or is that the
Well-
extent of his wizarding?
He can calculate too.
Yeah, well, he can calculate. Now,
He's got a wand.
Could he
he's
just
got a
do-
wand.
Could he just do these
He
calculations?
can, but he won't because he wants you to learn grasshopper. He does not want to do your work for you.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Worst wizard
Wor-
ever.
yeah. He is very limited. But it would be cool to have a wizard as like, like a hearing officer would be cool. You could just go, poof, it's fixed. So here's an example of a bonus prorating with a year. So I've taken the 1,200 and I've divided by 12 to come up with $100 a month. Quarterly bonus of 1,200 would be divided by 3, would be $400 a month. Yearly bonus, you could just add in the 1,200 because if you're using a year, and that's why I always recommend using the year because it's so much easier to do than the prorating. Because you got to figure this out. But usually what happens is you get the bonus 1,200 and it don't tell you what it's for. So you got to call and find out what is the bonus for. If there's anybody out there who's filling out D8s, please tell us what the bonuses are for. Please tell us. We'll be so happy. Wally will visit you.
So the employer has to tell you why?
Yes.
Yeah, well, and it's like with bonuses, it depends on the client. I've some that get bonuses every 6 months and you see it and you know what it is. But then, like I said, I have some that do a Christmas bonus one year and not the next. And then one person paid a bonus at Halloween. Don't ask me why they did that. Yeah, it's like, well, maybe it's Nevada Day bonus. Maybe that's what it was. We'll go with that. But I was like, why did you pay this? Oh, we just gave them money. Cool, okay, right on. I know, I want that one.
Yeah, what client is
Are
that?
you listening, Corbell? I want the Halloween bonus. I don't know. Meals, lodging, and tips. If you get any of those, you're cool because the D5 has blanks for you to put them and even shows you how to calculate them so you can add them in. If you get that unidentified income, find out what it is. Look at the NAC if you're not sure. See if it's included. There's a laundry list of them. I'm sure Denise will copy and paste the laundry list and put it in chat. There's a huge list of the stuff that's included. And if she wasn't going to do it, she is now, you know. Denise is the secret instructor from afar. And again, Wally's tip, again, being Wally, the worst wizard, the worst wage wizard, is telling you, make sure you document whatever you're finding. Because honestly, I've gone into wages that are 2 years old, and somebody's prorated something or included something, and I'm like, what is this? And there's no notes, there's nothing to tell me what it is. Like, okay, do I know what that is? So make sure that you're documenting it thoroughly so we know what you're doing. Then this is actually probably Wally's best recommendation.
She just posted.
She did, didn't she? Great job, Denise. Love Denise. You want to determine if you have the wage information you need to calculate the wages, and if you don't, stop. Don't waste your time. Don't do partial ones. Unless you're doing it for what Christina mentioned earlier, just to come up with a tentative wage. Don't spend hours on a wage trying to figure out why it doesn't work when it's because it doesn't have the right information. And I don't know how many of you out there, have you ever seen wages where someone's just used a random period of time?
Yes.
Apparently Ann has.
They just make it up. And
I
you're
mean,
like, where'd you get these dates
You'll
from?
see, and it's like, well, I used,
Figured and I thought and I.
right? And it's like, I used 63 days. Well, why? Well, because that's what's there on the form.
Right.
Well,
No.
you're right, but you're not
If
right.
you're gonna do a tentative, keep trying to get the right information. Don't just forget about it and pay it like that's really what they're entitled to.
Like, at least it's something
Go
that
back,
you go.
keep trying, and make
Yeah.
a note in your 30 days, have I got the correct wages yet?
Yes.
Because
diary
you've
to
got too
follow
many
on.
files to remember, was that tentative or was that real?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
keep reminding yourself in your notes to go back and get
Because
it.
when you get ready to pay the PPP.
Oh my
and it's
gosh,
still
I was
tentative,
just gonna say that.
That is a terrible, terrible time for
when you go to the PPD and find out that the wage you've been using for the last 2 years is a tentative wage and it was never verified, then usually throw something across. In the old days, you could throw something in the office. At my house, I probably won't do that, but I'll think about throwing something.
Mike, what about the issue of the tips, the D-23 form, the declaration of tips? Are employees still required to fill that out, the ones that are in the tipping industry?
The question was, do we have to use the D-23 for tipping?
The declaration form.
Well,
Declaration form.
If you want it included.
yeah, well, I'm gonna give you my answer, and then I'm gonna let Dalton tell me that it's wrong, because I know it probably is. If the employer lists them, then I usually use what the employer gives me. Because in the clients I have, they're in the gaming industry, so they have that secret way that they do things. And they give me the wages. But, would you say that they need to have the D-23?
Sue here, what is the DIR, let me ask you what the DIR, what you were looking for when you were there. If you're auditing a file.
I was not looking for that form.
You're
And one of the issues, folks, till the end of the year,
Mm.
for the wage salary and not their tips. A lot of employees don't understand that should they get injured on the job, because you're reporting your tips at the end of the year instead of every year.
I suspect that Kevin or Billy Marie might have some.
Are gaming included, but the point is just what Dalton said. They're generally not paying taxes on the part that's not reported.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it like a Uber driver, Uber Eats or something like
Mm.
that. You know, for someone like that, if they get their wage and it comes back and they get $12 a day, and they're like, do I make more than that? I would recommend they fill the D-23 out. And say, if you
Cynthia
make,
said, show me the tax return.
That's
Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that
Yep.
we can do, but
Yeah.
yeah,
you mentioned Uber. I had one where the individual was earning from Uber as a concurrent employment.
right.
And wanted that included, but the nice thing about Uber and any of the gig economy jobs, there's an app for that, and you can get from the app what they were paid. So to the extent that you have that come up, if the claimant is represented, which is what we did in this case, or if they're not, you should be asking them. All of it's in the app. It's all done electronically. There's a paper trail for all of it.
Okay.
All right, so we're not going to spend a bunch of time calculating wages that don't have info we need. Instead, we're going to get the info we need. Once you have your period of calculation and you have everything you need, then Wally says, do the math. And there he is using his abacus. Wally's also a little bit old. He's an ancient wizard. Maybe at one point,
Worst wizard ever.
maybe at one point he was a better wizard and he's just gotten burnt out.
Maybe he's retired, okay? He's old.
He could be retired. He's got,
Abacus.
what is it, 6 Saturdays and a Sunday?
6 Saturdays and a Sunday.
Whatever. Yeah,
He's
so,
clearly on a budget if he's just got an abacus.
well,
Poor guy.
yeah,
Fixed income.
he did have he did have a stop sign. All right, so now let's take a quick look at the D5, everybody's favorite form. If it's not the D8, it has to be the D5. And Wally has some recommendations for you there. And I've said this about 15 times, and I think you can get the point. Document the calculations so the people trying to figure out what you did can figure out what you did, and so you can figure out what you did when you've forgotten 2 years later. And I have, Wally has, remember, you need to be able to explain these calculations to injured workers, employers, attorneys, auditors, supervisors. And I literally have had adjusters who have said, that's what the spreadsheet said. That doesn't quite answer the question. You need to know where that stuff's coming and how it's included. And then this is a tough one, but I noticed that sometimes when you question somebody's wages, they get really mad. Like I get some adjusters. Well, they are, but it's like you ask them about something to do with a wage and they're like, what? No, I include that. What? Don't take it personally. If everybody's, if somebody's questioning your calculations, have confidence that you've done it correctly. And not everybody's good at math like you are. And so if you've done any calculations or spreadsheets or anything, please make sure it gets in the claim file. And if you have questions, please ask rather than do an incorrect calculation. So these are basic things that I don't think we're really teaching anybody, but just kind of top of mind things to remember. D5 has the demographic information like the other forms. And then it tells you straight out on the D5 what NACs you can look for. Because virtually all the wage calculation regulations are contained right there. In the old days, we used to have a printout of it and we just go and use it. But now you can put it on your computer. And we also have the handout that I'll give you. So 616C420 to 447. And if you forget that, it's on the D5.
I think we had a mimeographed copy, if I remember correctly.
I'm probably sure. Either that or some monk scrolled. And some monk went through and
microfiche or something
by
like that.
candlelight, yeah. And then it kind of gives you some priorities that they've set for calculating wage. We like to use the 84 days or the year, preferably both, as Wally says. If they've been employed for more than 4 weeks but less than 12, we want to use actual wages for the actual period. And then if it's less than 4 weeks, we've got to use the projection method. And that is essentially where we get the periods of calculation. So that's actually on the form. What did that say? That said, other circumstances apply, see 616C435. So there you go. It even tells you where to go. I've been told where to go lots.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat. So then it's got the information for the calculation of 84 days, 1 year, full period of employment, where you actually add the gross up, and it divides by the number of days in the period of calculation and comes up with your wage when you run it through this formula. And everybody's done this before. That is calculated a wage anyway.
Hey, Mike, what's 30.44?
30.44 be the average number of days in a month when you take all the months of the year. Because some months have 30 days. Well, all months have 30 days. Some have 30 what?
No.
Except February. Most months have 30 days. I can't, you can't see it online. There's a thing you used to be able to do with your knuckles. You ever do that? Where it's like, you start with your knuckle, and that's January, and then you go in between the knuckles, and that's February, March, April, May, June, July, and then repeat August, September, October. Those of you out there need to understand, I was about to give you something really helpful that you would have used for the rest of your life, but Anne has said, no, no time for that. So off we go. And then the D5 also has the part for the projected wages, which is if they have not been there. I get more employers so mad about this. I don't know what it is, but when somebody gets hurt on like their second day on the job, it's just like really annoys everybody. And then they're like, what? You're going to project their wages, but they've only been here 2 days.
I was gonna fire him.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's the rule. And the projection formula is also here.
And I had one piecework that only been there for 2 days.
Now, piecework we have differently.
Yes.
I hate them, but not those people, just the wages.
Yes.
Here's the section for the room, board, and meals. So you can just plug everything in there for room, board, and meals. And we add them. Look at that. Just add them together. And then you get your total average monthly wage. And this one, I do like to point out during the conversion for the average monthly wage to a daily rate. So everybody kind of knows inherently that it's 66 2/3% is what you get as your comp rate. So it's not your full wage, it's 66 2/3%. And nowhere will you find in the calculation 66 2/3%. This is where it occurs. And I've actually had people tell injured workers when they question their average monthly wage, they'll say, well, remember, that's 2/3. And that's not the case. The average monthly wage is your actual wages, which for some reason when you see what you earn on paper, it just doesn't seem like very much. You know, it's like, no, I earn more than that. I know I do.
No, you just spend more than
You just spend more than that. It is in the conversion of the average monthly wage to the daily rate. That's where the 2/3 comes in. But instead of using 66 2/3%, what they do is multiply by 8 and divide by 12. And I think if you do that, if you actually took the number 8 and divided it by 12, I think it comes out to 66 2/3%.
There's no equal sign in there until you get to the end.
Yeah, no equal sign until you get to the end. And in the old days when you were doing wage tapes, that was really critical. So, again, if you're talking to an injured worker, please don't tell them the average monthly wage is 2/3, because it's not. That's what you actually make. The 2/3 comes in calculating the daily rate, which we then do there. And then, of course, the date and signature. And please make sure that you're dating and signing. And if you're in a company like mine where you want them all checked, make sure the person that checks it is dating and signing so that you can show that you didn't just make it up and randomly put it in. Okay, so we're actually flying through part of this.
No, not really.
We're not?
Why, we still have an hour.
So Wally has a few extras. And this is where we'll probably spend quite a bit of time.
Oh, I see.
I had totally spaced deem wages. And then Christina, when she got my PowerPoint, said, you have not addressed deemed wages. And I have said, oh gosh, you are so right. So I'm going to let Christina do that part because she was the reason it's here. I had forgotten.
All right. A lot of people don't understand deemed wages, but if you have an employer who is also the owner of the company, they have a policy, and their policy and the premiums that they pay are based on payroll. So as the owner, operator of a business, an individual can go ahead, get a policy, and put down that he makes $100 a month. And that is part of the reason his premium is what it is. He's not claiming any set income coming in. So now this guy gets injured, and you ask for a D8, and he sends you all of this. I mean, he's making thousands of dollars a week. So you have to, when you know that you have an owner, injured worker, you have to go to your account manager and ask for a policy copy of the policy. And you have to take a look on that policy to see if they are declaring deemed wages at whatever amount, $100 a month, $500 a month, or if deemed wages is even mentioned. If there's no mention of a deemed wage on that policy, then you can go ahead and accept his wages. But if there's a mention of deemed wages on that policy, and he's deeming that he gets $100 a month, that's his average monthly wage.
In the old days, they used to be able to pick.
No,
Wait,
he's not.
So is that
Do they
just
still
the
do that?
owner, or is that the owner's employee?
Only the owner.
Only the owner?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if he's
So
got
he's trying to make
employees,
himself look like he doesn't make a lot of money
well,
on his
it brings
policy
his
to get better
policy,
premiums.
it brings his premium
So
down.
a sole proprietor will get a policy because they don't have insurance. And it's cheaper to buy a workers' comp policy
Policy.
to cover their medical in the event that they're injured on the job. And if they're injured on the job, they're the ones telling me it was on the job.
Yep.
So
Well, maybe I should go
you're a
that
sole
route. I should
proprietor.
go that route. Hold on, I pay like $900 a month for insurance.
And you could easily tell me that you were working when you were involved in that
Sure
motor
was.
vehicle accident, or you were working when you tripped
Fell
off those
right off
shoes.
my shoe.
Have you seen them shoes?
Yeah.
We saw.
Yeah.
Last time, I broke it, see? I
Right?
could totally
So
do
as
that.
a sole proprietor, you can have team wages, or you can have no wages, but medical only. So you're covering yourself for
Yep.
And
medical.
you used to be able to pick between 300 and 1,800. I don't know, I'm sure they've changed it. It's been a long time since I've done a deemed wage.
I think 36,000 a year is the max for a sole
Yeah.
proprietor.
And so you paid a different premium if you picked 300 than if you picked 1,800.
Uh-huh.
So it was really important to know which one they picked, which is what Christina was talking about, getting the policy, because of course they wanted to pay 300 when they did the premiums, but now they want 18. Looking it up now. Wages, because as Christina said, they'll report their wages, what they're actually getting, but it's going to be significantly higher than what they've deemed. Everybody's get. You cannot project a piece. Someone is paid by piece work, and then they get hurt on the job within the first 28 days. to calculate
Right.
wages for your injured worker. And you didn't get these very often, but when you did, it was like, oh. It's like doing,
Employers hate it, because employers only have 4 employees. The 4th one they hired yesterday got hurt, and the other 3 are stars. So now all of a sudden, we're gonna pay Joe Schmo on a wage that my superstars were earning. And they're like, no, I don't wanna do that. And that's the challenge of our jobs.
so in that case, what you're basically gonna do is each one of the employees' wage, just like you would if they were your injured worker. And then when you get done, just take the 3 wages and average them, and then you get the piecework.
So does this hold true for commissions?
No, commissions, well, wait,
Yep.
what did we do with projecting
No
commissions in the old
salary,
days?
just straight commission?
Yep.
Some of them are.
Straight commission
I
and
think, do we do them on straight commissions
I
too?
don't know.
It could be a real low salary
I,
and.
that would be like a car
No.
salesman and you got
'Cause your
the rock
commission is
star
like your
car
bonus.
salesman.
I think we did do these kinds of things on commissions
Well,
too.
there's a line on the
You're not
form
required
that
to look at
asks
the
about
3,
commission.
but you're still, so the question floating around up here is, and thank you for the question, Trudy, was, does this work the same on commissions? Before I answer that, let me just say, again, piece workers, the employer being irritated because they've got 3 superstars and 1 bum who got hurt on the 3rd day. Well, the idea is, again, what we're trying to do is fairly represent what they do. And presumably, one human being can do what another one can do, although obviously there's gonna be different level of skill. It's the best way we have to measure it, is to look at similarly situated employees in the same company. We're assuming you're trying to motivate them however you're trying to motivate them all the same way. Whether that's through a bonus, or you're mean and you're watching everything that they do, or you got a stopwatch and you're making sure that they're getting 25 parts done an hour, whatever the case is, we have to assume that you're doing the same thing with all your employees and they should be around in the same ballpark. The question comes up is, what if you only have 2 piece workers? What do you do then? There's no requirement for you to have 3 so we can get this calculation right. And then back to Trudy's question, what about commissions? Well, typically commissions are in addition to a salary, so you're gonna have that salary as a base. The commissions, I think Sandy said, you're treating it kind of like a bonus, but to the extent that what you've come up with based on those commissions, again, this is where you go back to that catch-all. Does this fairly represent what they earn? There's no requirement for you to take commissions and run it by 3 like employees like there is for piecework, because piecework is a thing. We know that it exists, and commissions, however, vary in terms of how they're done, what the basis for the commission is. So it's different. It's going to be treated differently from piecework, but it's the same kind of problem. And at the end of the day, if what you've come up with doesn't fairly reflect what this person earns, then you're not done yet. That's all I can say to you.
Casey said you cannot project commissions
Correct.
for deemed employees. Check out the listed definition in 616A.
Yeah, we're not talking about commissions for deemed employees or
No, but I
pay.
think she was just commenting on Trudy's, and then she had another comment about the
Okay.
deemed.
Yeah, and there are,
So what
Christie, what
commission,
is that 616A what?
Casey, 616A what? Can you respond to that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
That's in
Casey.
the definition of wages.
Definition of commissions.
yeah,
So if you have, commissions, then you don't get TTD? Is that how that works?
No, you
No.
only have 6 months to do it.
yeah, I think what Casey's saying, and she's absolutely right, you can't project commissions, 'cause you can't predict,
Right.
how much commissions you would get. I probably would do, if I truly had one like that, I probably would do something like this. Probably use the 3, different than deemed. Deemed wages are set by policy and by statute, so those are different. Those are easy because deemed wages are actually really easy because all you do is plug in
Put
the
in a
number.
number.
Put the number
And
in.
you're
No
done.
math.
There's no calculation. But if you're talking about somebody who gets commissions and you can't project them, then this is probably as good a method as any to use. I'm not sure that there's an official regulation to do it, but I think that it would be the most equitable way. Because like Dalton keeps saying, you need to have something that's representative of what the injured worker was earning on their date of injury.
Now, and the employee can come in and say, well, yeah, I was supposed to get commissions, and I was going to sell 50 cars a day, and my commissions were gonna be sky high, but that isn't, again, reality. So it's not a liberal interpretation for the claimant. It is, let's see if we can get to the truth of what this is likely to be. So what you might have to do is to, let's say that is a car dealer, get with that employer and find out, okay, this person came to you with 2 years of experience. What are some comps of this? So you're like doing real estate, you're trying to get comps to figure out what is reasonable.
She said 616A 120 to 225.
Awesome, thank you.
Nice.
Is that in your hand?
Thank you, Casey.
So when you get a funky one, you sometimes have to be creative in the way you do it, come up with something that's going to be representative. We're going to talk about more funky ones, I'm sure. So one other thing, I have to tell kind of a funny story. So when I first started in BCS, which was the benefit control section in the old SIIS, we were responsible for calculating wages and paying checks. That was our job. I was invited to go, they needed a wage person to go on this panel discussion. And so for those of you old school folks, this was a panel discussion with all the bigwigs of the old SIS, Jackie Redaway and Nancy Jennings, and there was one of our attorneys. And it was like all of the top people. And then they needed somebody for wages. And our boss at the time, Michelle Milbrett, didn't want to do it. So I think I was the only one that would go. So I went. Now I've just started. I'm pretty good at wages. I know my job, but I'm green as can be. And so Nancy had told me, look, you're just going to come and answer a question. They're not going to ask you any questions. We just have to have a wage person. So we walk into the panel discussion. We all sit down, and they open it up for the questions. And the very first one is from a union guy. He says, explain how you calculate wages for union people. And he's really mad, and he's yelling. And I'm like, oh, well, sir. So I'm sorry to share that with you because you're all like, who cares? But I'm sharing because whenever I see union calculations for wages,
You have PTSD, Michael?
I do a bit, and I'm like, so if my voice breaks while explaining this one, you'll know why, because, man, it was my first ever, and Nancy jumped in, and then I felt really bad because I don't think she told him the right thing, but I wasn't going to say anything. So I just sat there meekly and went, please don't ask me any more questions, sir, because I don't want to answer. But a lot of employees are referred out by the union hall. So they will actually go to multiple different employers, so to speak, and they get hurt. You use the wages basically for all of the jobs they were referred out to from the union. So you're actually going to use wages from other employers. The union has all those wages. So if you work with somebody that's mostly in the construction trades that does that, the union can provide the wage history for the appropriate period of calculation, and you use it from all employers. It's just different because normally you wouldn't do that. If somebody's non-union and they work for this employer for 3 weeks, and then they go to this employer for 3 weeks, and they go to this employer for 3 weeks, you're only going to use the employer of record, the one that they got hurt with. But for unions, it's different. You use the list of employees. So it's basically almost like the union is the employer, and all the wages are from the union.
You see a lot of that with GPS, BIAD, the setups of Teamsters.
And it's funny because depending on what clients you have as an adjuster, there's a lot of adjusters out there going, I've never calculated one of those in my life because they don't have them. And then the ones who do are like, I do those every day. And they know, so it's kind of one of those, probably if you're not doing them, just be glad and move on. Be glad and move on and be happy. If you are doing them, you probably didn't need me to explain that anyway. So you ignored me and went on with your typing. And that's fine too. But but we brought it up because it's right there in the NACs, and it is something that you will run into if you have those type of employees. And then comes concurrent wages. And so I've had several debates about concurrent wages because over the years, the interpretation of how to calculate them has changed. One of the basic principles of concurrent wages is that you have to be employed with that employer on the date of injury, which means if you quit your second job 2 days before you got hurt, you're kind of out of luck. If you get hired in your second job 2 days after you get hurt, you're kind of out of luck. You have to have that job and be employed at the time you're injured. And you can have as many employers as you want as you work, as long as you were employed by them on the date of injury. I always picture that old comedy sketch with the guys like, what are you doing? Only working 2 jobs.
You lazy lima bean.
You lazy lima bean. Yeah, I remember that. You need to have 4 jobs. I'm working 5 jobs.
So somebody asked, would a temp agency be treated similar to a union?
No. And I know that's a lousy answer, but they're not. The unions were carved out in the regulations through legislation and through lobbying and all the things that they do. So they're a special exemption. Temporaries, you would use them just like any other job. It would be the job that they were hurt on. And there's a lot of those out there. So on the concurrent wages, did somebody have a question? On the concurrent?
Someone's working 2 jobs and.
Yeah, and so it's common. I tell you when this becomes really interesting is when they get hurt on what would be their second job. So you got your main job where maybe you make, $20 an hour or whatever, or 30. You got when you're paying. Question. When we figure concurrent wages,
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Here who's gonna get. They have a.
and it's
You
really
volunteer for free, the statute says you get money.
Listen, I volunteer every day for this.
don't.
Here says, if you have an employee who also does volunteer work, is the deemed volunteer amount a concurrent wage? Yes,
Yes.
it is. That answer, Amy, is a yes.
If they're volunteering Yep.
use your hospital wages to calculate your average monthly wage.
Yeah, you would use them both. You get the deemed wage.
Yeah, you use both.
Yeah,
That's
if you're in the
crazy.
hospital, you're not happy.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well-
they don't
But
really
see-
care because it's not their insurance, it's the volunteers.
But again, let me just demystify this. You just gotta go back to brass tacks. We're trying to make you whole as the date of your injury. So if you're one of the Headleys, which is where that skit came from, and you have 25 jobs, that's what you were doing. You were working 25 jobs. So you're gonna have look, we're gonna cut you off with the max wage. The system isn't trying to make you perfect, and we're only gonna give you 66 2/3 of it. But what you were doing on the day you got hurt, the idea is, had you not been injured, you would have kept doing that. That's why we don't project forward, oh, I was gonna get a great job yet tomorrow. Or I was a real contender, I had a great job yesterday.
Oh, in California, you project forward on
That's
those
right.
people injured on the second day. I have the earnings potential.
Oh,
Do not tell anybody here about that.
Yeah, well, we're not doing PI law where we're trying to figure out what your earning potential is. It's, the system is designed for one thing, to compensate employees for injuries that arise out of the course of their scope of their employment and not otherwise, and we're only looking at the day you got hurt. What were you doing on the day you got hurt? If you got concurrent employment, we're gonna make you whole on that. That's it. So it sounds harsh, not harsh, just remember what we're doing.
Exactly.
Wait, so when you go back to the deemed wages thing and the commission thing, and you're trying to look at 3 other employees who earn that kind of, in the same similar job, right? And let's just say, if you're like a rep and you're like the only one in Nevada, would they look at out-of-state people for comparison?
No, an out-of-state person is not gonna be an adequate,
So if there's only one person who does the job at a time.
then we're gonna be stuck where we're trying to figure out what makes sense. That's that's what the catch-all is for. But I just wanna clarify one thing you said. The 3 days applies to piecework, not commissions. So piecework, the things that are in this section that we're talking about, deemed wage, it's either in the statute or it's in your policy if you're a sole proprietor. Piecework, can't project it, we gotta look at exemplars. Commissions, one thing about commissions, I said wage, you're gonna look at their salary. If they have a base salary, that's gonna be part of their wages, and then commissions are an add-on. Billy Marie texted me and said, usually commissions get a draw, not a salary. There are folks who get a draw. There are plenty who actually get a salary and commissions on top of that. But in addition to that, she wanted to point out that if you are somebody who gets a draw, you're really just commissions, you get a draw. Your draw is gonna be subtracted from your commissions. But, let's hope that you've got some kind of history, 84 days or more, so that we can look at what you were making from those commissions and have something to work with. Otherwise, we're in the situation where Michael was talking about. Again, we're trying to find something fair. And if we're looking around to see, well, what would we do that'd be fair in this situation, we can look at the part that deals with piecework and say, well, this is a reasonable way to do this. So give me 3 people and I'll see if I can come up with something that's fair there. You do that, Kevin may not, I don't know where Kevin went, he came in, he left like a thief in the night. He may look at that and say, well, I don't think that's fair because if you look historically at my guy or gal, she's been the #1 performer at the company, and these other exemplars are not really good exemplars, and we may be in the same position. You've got the best 3 people in the company. Your person has never performed at that level. It doesn't represent, so you are not going to have, if you get into the weeds with these complicated orders, an exact answer. It's not an exact science. We'll have to figure it out. But you'll have to keep working until you get to something that's fair, and ultimately that might be decided by a judge.
And keep in mind, this is a very, very small amount of wages you're talking about. As far as most commission earners that I've ever had have more than 4 weeks wage history. And if they have more than 4 weeks wage history, then all the things we're talking about is kind of moot, because you just
Do math.
do the math, just like you do on any other wage. Only talking about the projected people that had gotten hurt. So it's unlikely that, for instance, if somebody had only been there 2 weeks and got hurt, they're probably not your best performer yet. I mean, I don't know, but That's a very small number of
Highly
people.
unlikely.
And so you're not, most of the time you'll get ones that have enough wage history to use. Not always, there are always exceptions. And it gets really strange, because with concurrent wages, the other thing about that is you will get some strange concurrent wage scenarios, like the volunteer who gets hurt on their volunteer job but works a full-time job. I think it's important what Dalton said. I want to reiterate that. We do have a max wage, so if you're Dalton making, 4.6 million a year, you're not going to get 4.6 million a year.
Right.
You're going to be,
Tell me about it.
you're going to be capped. So even if you hire Dalton as a volunteer, you don't have to worry that you're going to be on the hook for 8.4 million a year. That,
Well, now you would get gross, and then that would be taxed at the end of the year, right?
well,
Right, but it also maxes out, so.
yeah, the state has a
That's
max.
one of the problems that high wage earners always have. If you see somebody making over $23 an hour, they're probably a max wage earner.
Is that what they're calling max wage now?
No,
No.
max wage is how it's calculated. I'm sure we're gonna see that wage go up now that our minimum wage is $72 an hour.
Right, right.
I'm
The,
sure we'll see that go up.
yeah, the max wage is,
Wage is 22 bucks?
there's a max wage handout that I did not include in my presentation, but if you need it, it's available on the DIR website, and you can see the max wage for each compensation year. And if you get anybody who's at max wage, they will want to get back to work so fast.
Yeah, of course. they're
You don't usually have to worry. In fact, I have one group of employees that are all max. Quite frankly, they never lose time, because
Yeah.
even if they're supposed to lose time, they will literally wheel themselves into wherever they go,
Because
and work.
if you're well over max, it's like
It's a-
1/3, not
it's
2/3.
way less.
Right.
You know.
It can be a lot less.
And particularly if you're a max wage earner and you're a tip earner.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh.
that's the other thing, valet parkers used to be classic. You'd see a valet parker with a cast on.
Right.
Because they're like, I'm not missing this day work.
And they won't.
And they won't miss it because they make $5 an hour, but they make $500 because they're doing tips. So, and they don't declare them because the IRS doesn't notice it. So those are the people that go back to work, because if you make excessive amount of tips, but that's not what you're claiming, then that's your problem.
Right.
And we're not gonna look at that, and that becomes a contention, because, there are certain jobs that make tips that the IRS don't necessarily regulate. Valet parker being one of them.
Tina Sanchez online wrote, for concurrent wages, has the fact that the concurrent employment has to be covered by a private carrier or plan of self-insurance been discussed?
We haven't gotten to that yet. Dalton brought up that the laws just recently changed to include federal government or just military.
So she has a little bit others. It appears that some think it is in any employment when it does not cover self-employment, etc. Uber does not appear to be covered, as it would not be covered under one of those plans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tina. The idea previously to the change is effectively, it's gotta be something that pays into the Nevada workers' comp system, in terms of concurrent employment. The change that was made 2 legislative sessions ago, was to add, military service, that would have been excluded. I think Jason, championed, that change, and so there have been some changes. You do want to, if you've got a unique situation, it's important to sit down with the statutes, with the code, and review it to make sure that if you're an attorney, aligning your advice with what the law is, and if you're an adjuster, that you're adjusting your claims in accordance with it. So we're not going to be able to cover every possible scenario in the class, but Tina's absolutely right. That is an important distinction to understand. I gave a short answer about Uber. The jury is out. So
Uber does not appear to be covered,
appear to be,
as it would be not covered under one of the plans.
appears to be the case.
Yes. Thank you, Tina.
So many times you end up litigating these issues, and then that changes it, as the litigation develops. So that's what I meant at the very beginning of the class when I talked about the interpretation changes, because sometimes you're interpreting a statute or a regulation or a statute a specific way, but then over time you have litigation which alters that interpretation, which I think is what you were getting at. Yeah. So when you calculate concurrent wages, what you're going to do is you're going to get the wage information from the different concurrent wages, and then I used to teach it that you calculated each one of them separately as if they were their own wage and then add them together at the end. If you have one that you're using the same period of calculation, so when we were talking about the 84 days or the year, it probably isn't going to make any difference if you add in the gross together or separately. It should come out the same. Where you will run into some issues is if you have somebody who, let's say in their primary job, gets injured on the third day, but their concurrent job, they've worked for, 10 years. You're not going to project the concurrent job where they've been there 10 years. You're going to figure that with the period of calculation that's appropriate, so 84 days or 1 year. And then the concurrent, or the primary job where you were only there 3 days, you're going to have to project that. And then you're going to add the wages together. I do see some where you will see the opposite. Let's say you have a primary job where they've been there for 10 years, so we've calculated that wage. And then they've got a concurrent into the 84-day period. But then when you divide by 84, you're watering down your 30 days. So it's not really a representation of what they're earning. So you need to make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you look at each concurrent wage. I always found the easiest way to do it was just to treat each one separately, calculate them separately, and then add them together.
So they don't have like an Excel, PowerPoint, spreadsheet y'all can plug in at this point? Workers' comp has been going on for so long and there's not one that the DIR provides, like, that's
No.
crazy. Oh,
1905
well.
and has passed it out. It's the same with our PPD calculations. There's Excel, we all in the industry use
Oh,
a
okay.
template.
Checking it, is that what it
Right.
would do?
Well, and you have to know, I mean, an Excel spreadsheet is as good as the data that you put in it. So if you do not understand your D5 or your D8 and you're filling out that Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't mean anything because you can't explain why I got $12 at the bottom. So it's kind of like when I get a new adjuster, I make them calculate manually their PPD for a number of months so that they understand by glancing at it if there's a problem.
I see.
And so we try not to depend on those Excel spreadsheets, but yes, they are created by the division manager.
Yeah, and the thing about the Excel spreadsheet, again,
Well, not everybody learned how to do it with an abacus like us.
well,
Directly
yeah.
from Wally.
Wally
Came
would,
down off the mountain and showed us how to do it
yeah.
with his abacus, but
It was more the adding machine, the old-fashioned adding machines, which I concurrent wage because they're not losing time from that job, so I won't add it in. That's not appropriate. You need to add it in to the concurrent wage so that your average monthly wage includes both wages, but you don't get TTD if you're working at one of the jobs. You have to use TPD to see if they could qualify.
And again, there's a natural reason where you can understand this. If they are working both jobs, but ultimately, or one of the jobs needs surgery and have to be off of both jobs, you're still gonna need an average monthly wage. You're still going to need one for calculating PPD and other benefits. So the two have to be separated in your mind in terms of one is a math problem, the other is what's going on with this person in terms of are they entitled to this benefit?
I do have a question online. If you have 1 year on the job of the injury and only 25 days on the second job, how does that work?
So you would do your first job, you would use the 1 year and the 84 days, see which one's higher. And then on the second job, you would project it because you only have 25 days.
For 30 days or for a year?
Did they say that the second job was 25 days or 30?
25 days on the second job.
If it's 25, it's in the projection category, so you would project it based on rate of pay.
And project how long? A year? Or 30?
When you project wages, what you're doing is you're taking the date of, or taking the amount of pay on the date of injury. So let's say it's hourly. You would take, your $25 an hour times 40 hours a week and go that route. If you were projecting based on a different, like if you weren't getting paid hourly, you might have to project it on a salary. But then you're just adding the two wages together.
And then add them together.
And that's exactly the point we made with that it might change, the POC might not be the same for the two wages. It might be different. And that's where you get tricky, because you can't just add in the 25 days into the 84-day calculation or the year calculation, because then you're not getting the appropriate wage. It's getting watered down.
So can we do a takeaway?
And then if anybody has any additional questions online, please ask them or, type them in right now so that
We can get them
we
addressed.
can get them addressed before we end
So
here.
you
in about
guys'
15
takeaway.
minutes.
Christina, what do you think it is?
For what?
She's like, wait,
Hey, it's
what meeting is
Saturday.
this? I didn't know I was not.
It's Saturday.
It's one of her
It's her
Saturdays.
Saturday.
Jeez. I don't think on Saturdays.
I know, I'm sorry, but you look good, so that's all
Thank
that
you,
matters,
thank
you know,
you.
hey. Do the calculations, that's it.
Yeah.
Do the work,
Do the work.
yep. Kevin, did you have a question?
It's not really, it is a question, but it really is to find out from the group what everybody does. So oftentimes,
We don't know.
well, no, oftentimes what happens is that certainly if there's wage calculations and we request them, we do it two different ways. We are aware that insurers and TPAs, that I'll call insurers collectively, have to get that information from employers, so we understand that. Also, you need to understand that when someone comes to me, it's my ethical
they've accepted a lot of the liability and obligations. And so a self-insured employer usually is very quick to get it back to you because they understand and they got it. A lot of the local or Nevada employers also understand the need, much slower, but the need. And I think really the problem runs into when we're talking about the nationals. And that's because when I'm trying to explain to someone in Ohio how the D8 works and where to get the information, I actually had an employer once that didn't understand why we kept screaming about it. When we had a meeting, they realized it took 4 different people in their organization to complete the D8. 4 different ones. And so what we do is, if we're on a court order, again, communication, we say, hey, look, this court order, we have to have this in 30 days. We have to have this in 10 days. We have to have this in 5 days. We're now late, and because we're late, if we get fined or if we have any problems, we're going to go ahead and pass that on to you. And then we continue to pressure and whatever. Internally, in an organization like mine, we can go upwards because we have account managers. And account managers who have a little bit more intimate relationship can go, look, you really got to do it. I know that talks crazy, but you really got to do it and do that. If I find that we're coming close to the end of a time, we try to reach out to both attorneys and say, look, this is where we're at with this is what we're doing. And if we're communicating that, I've never had even a plaintiff attorney come back at me and go, no. But if we're not communicating and we've gone down 30 days and it's still crickets, then it does get nasty. It does get nasty. And the key to that is to communicate. Say, look, I got this wage, I'm waiting on that. And I think wages is the one place in our business that we all should continue to talk openly about because it's not for interpretation. It's black and white.
Right.
It works the way it works, it's not. Now, regretfully, I do find administrators to have errors quite a bit because we haven't had this kind of thing since 1905. But I think that that's what happens with it. It depends on the type of carrier, the policy, and then how much pressure and leeway we can use to threaten.
Which is great, thank you. I will note that I don't think I can count at all of any issues I have outstanding with Corbell on wages. And maybe perhaps that's their approach that they're choosing to use. Don't know, but thank you for that.
But you know, Kevin, we used to handle the assigned risk, and they're in the assigned risk because they're the uninsurables. Nobody wants to cover them. And sometimes, and Julie and I, we work together assigned risk. Sometimes we talk to the employer, we're like, go to your employer, get your wages, bring them to us. So we'll do whatever method.
Or like we were talking, W-2.
Bring me your W-2.
Right.
W-2, the employer's gone out of business, employer's not responding, and they go, well, I worked there 3 years, I got a W-2.
Bring it.
I'm not above that. I'm not above that. I will use a W-2 in a 12-month.
Because another thing too, sorry to suck up all the oxygen here, but one thing that Randy noticed before is that he said something that people get sensitive about wages. They do. Even my own clients, I mean, and it's a sensitive issue because it deals with money.
Oh, yeah.
But it's even more sensitive in the event that there is an adjustment pending out there that their claim needs to be made.
Right.
And regardless, it may be understandable the delay from the carrier to the employer. It's not understandable to the injured worker at all, no matter how good you are. I'm pretty good, pretty suave, but to tell them,
If I do say so myself.
Break your arm doing that? Pat yourself on the back?
I had one of my adjusters.
Did you get a work comp injury just now, hurting your arm, patting yourself on the back? Or
Shoulder, okay?
is that a strain sprain?
I always speak for myself.
That's right.
What does it say?
I had an adjuster where I recalculated, I'm like, no, you're off, and she goes, well, it's only $100. Not $100 in retro over the last pay. You know what, $100 to me, and $100 to you, and $100 to somebody else, very different. Money, it's their money, they're entitled to it, I don't care if it's
Right.
I mean, we went back and forth on a calculation, and it was change, right? But you do the right thing.
Always. And when it comes to wages, it's black and white. Because, you know, I tell the story, you know, for those of us who were at CDS, you know, they didn't pay us on Friday. They came on Monday and they said, here's your paycheck. Don't ever hold a paycheck on someone.
Right.
And that's a lesson you learn because you don't know, you don't know. So be right. Be always right.
Absolutely.
And always have your calculations checked by somebody else.
Amen.
Always.
Amen.
And when an adjuster says, hey, could you please check this for me?
Yeah.
don't just sign off on it,
Nope.
check it, because everybody makes mistakes.
Stop everything
Absolutely
and check it.
everybody.
Don't delay it, don't set it aside. Your coworker asks you, check it, check it, check it. And
We
do
do
the right work.
have,
Because here's the thing, as your manager, if I'm your manager, and the wage is wrong, I'm coming at both of you. I'm coming at both of you.
Yeah.
Whoever checked it and whoever wrote it, I'm coming at both of you.
Yeah, and I mean, the truth is, I've been doing wages for a long time, but I make mistakes all the time. That's just who I am.
Well,
I make mistakes.
That's who everyone is. I
But-
think you're just a little bit more honest about it.
Well, we have like at our company, we have well, there's one of our adjusters who does virtually all the checking, Tina. And she's really good at it, and she's really, down to earth. But if she comes up with something different, then like she'll always call me if we do that, and then we'll talk about, okay, what did you do here? Because it doesn't make sense. And then sometimes I'm right, sometimes she's right. And it works out really well because you at least got two set of eyes looking at a wage. And that's what's important.
So Casey Doan, she works with Kevin, so here's what Casey says. When you cannot get the payroll history from the employer, there is an NRS statute, 6168.
Sue Aaron and I were just talking about it.
Point 0651B that states you can use the 150% of the state average weekly wage as computed by the DEETR.
Okay, say it again.
She said DEETR.
Dieter.
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 Yeah, Department of Employment Training something.
Rehab.
Rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation.
Amber Nelson says, I currently have an employer who refuses,
Yeah, I've had that employer that refuses to give it because one, they don't believe it was her,
Yeah.
and two, they only worked here for 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you nothing. So that's exactly right. That's how we do it.
sorry, it went out of this.
Yeah. And I would write that.
No. They just,
So Amber, 150% of the, and put the numbers in that.
just
let
point her
them
to
complain then.
to what Casey put in.
Repeat that statute.
And if it's in the chat, then that's a great place to look for it.
616A0651B.
I found
And that's a 1-year wage.
Yeah.
I don't know what's on there. I don't know if he got capital gains or whatever. But the court was like, well, we don't
Well,
care.
if the
You had
employer's
plenty
not
of time to
cooperating,
produce it, you didn't.
then you're not going to have a strong case.
Right.
I don't want to.
This is a really bad negative example, but we had another one on the other side of that equation. You want to share it?
Oh, the person was an owner, didn't have he didn't put on his policy, he had no earnings. So I called all, we ended up using his meals to calculate his benefit rate. And it happens that he had passed away when when the accident occurred, he got killed. So I had to tell his wife that he's gonna get $5 a day.
Oh.
And 12 kids.
He had a widow and 3 kids and no deemed wage. The only thing he had in his policy was a per diem. We did the best we could to come up with something to compensate him. But,
That's horrible.
Yep, that's a rough one.
but again, you have to look at owners. The idea is owners don't get salaries typically unless they decide that they want one. They get profits from the business. So hopefully they were profitable and there was some more money there. But in terms of wages under the act, there's not a lot to work with.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying they're gonna do that 150% of Tina Berglund's.
Yeah.
We're gonna be going right
All right, you guys, thank you so much. We're gonna start the raffle, so we do have several raffle prizes, so I'm gonna
We have
swing
raffle
this
tickets.
around.
Thanks for putting up with that, because I know wages is kind of a scintillating topic, but
They were on the edge of the seat.
I know.
I for one
I
was.
thought it was hysterical, it's all the 1.1s that were,
I got to the point, I never knew what you were gonna say next.
Yeah. Yeah, here, why don't you come do wages? Okay.
It really was, you wanted wages, we all went to the darkroom.
All right, we have a $50 Lowe's gift card from Dr. Rod Perry. Winning number is in person, 315637. 637. Is that mine? Oh, Trish? The next one is a $50 Amazon gift card from Simon Med. Winning person is Aurelia Nagin. Nagin? I saw her online commenting, so I'll mail you that. If you can email me your address, that would be awesome. The next one is a $50 Cheesecake Factory gift card from AMG. Winning person is Jacqueline Corrales online. Jacqueline Corrales. The next one is a $25 Domino's Pizza gift card and a $10 Cold Stone gift card from Hand Center of Nevada. Winning person is Jordan Roberts. Jordan Roberts online.
Oh, that's the attorney.
She was talking about you.
Yeah, they had the question earlier.
Did you guys just break it?
Please pardon me. The door's open. See, all of us deal with this
Oh.
every day.
I would tell all of those of you out there that there is some shenanigans going on over there.
Who paid
If
for it?
one of them wins the next prize, I'm gonna say,
Rigged.
All right, this next one, I'm gonna give is a blanket from
It's mine.
Trish Gibson, I think this is from Trish Gibson Marketing, and a $25 Amazon gift card, which she will email you. So the winning is in person, and the winning person is 315666.
That's gotta be Michael.
that's not me. That might be Wally.
Maria, hey, email Trish and tell her you won a $25 gift card. Yep, that's it.
Oh, boy.
Yep, you can keep your ticket.
Christine,
The next gift is a. I'm not even
WD-40.
sure on it.
It's something.
$25 Amazon gift card from Andre Razinin. This is from Trish Gibson Marketing.
Looks like a
It's a bunch
diffuser.
of stuff. Winning person is 315664. Is that you again, Maria? 664? All right, well, you're getting hooked
Uh-huh.
up with this.
They all fall out, and all of a sudden, one person's winning everything.
I think there was a
I
little.
don't know how you did that from way over there, but
Our next gift is a $50 Kohl's gift card from Kelly Hawkins Physical Therapy. The winner is Sonia Dupree. Sonia Dupree online.
You know, you can just stick your hand in there.
Oh, I see what you're doing there.
That's called a randomizer.
Randomizer.
oh, a
This
random.
is also from Trish Gibson. It's a $50 Outback gift card from Hand Surgery Specialists of Nevada. Winning number 315644. 644.
So close,
All
but
right.
no cigar. That one I would have liked.
Yeah.
Outback is tasty.
All right, this one also is from Trish Gibson. This is from Dr. James Manning, $50 Marshall's gift card for Walter Galdamez online. Walter Galdamez.
We all think that if one of the prizes is WD-40, that you ought to keep that one.
Yeah, right, very good idea.
Because,
The next one is a $50 Amazon gift card. Trudy will email it to you. The winning person is Maravik Rivera. Maravik.
I know her, it is.
Our next one is also from Trudy. It's a $50 Amazon gift card. She will email to you. Winning person 315657. 657.
Yay, me.
Yay! Our next one is our next one is a $50 Bath and Body Works from Verushka at Capital Vote Consulting. Verushka, Claudia, Debbie. Winning person is Grace Fuentes online. Grace Fuentes.
Oh, no, that's Bad Bath and Beyond. I'm sorry.
oh, I was gonna say, congratulations, $10 million.
Oh, yeah, to,
Now
Our
we're
next
gonna
one is a
surprise
$50
surprise.
Amazon gift card from
Circuit
Dr.
City.
Andrew Park.
$300.
The winning
Circuit
person
City.
is Christina Cabrera
Nice.
online. Our next one is a $50 Home Depot gift card from Dr. Gary Morris. The winning person, Sabrina Walker. Sabrina. She can fix her house stuff.
Corvillian.